America, China. What is happening in this Rakhine state area?
This border which is there between Myanmar and Bangladesh is totally under the control of the Arakan army. Given the Chinese connect that the Arakan army has, China is now looking towards Bay of Bengal.
Why are the Americans interested in this now? And this whole humanitarian corridor.
America wants to stop this growth of this CMEC here. That's why they want a foothold here. From nowhere else can they get into Myanmar. Given that there are other countries, this is the only area from where they can get in.
Dr. Yunus, do you think that there was a backroom deal that he had with the Americans?
Today, Yunus' interest is only to survive. He wants to remain in power. Obviously, America cannot get into this directly. The role that the United States played to get him there. So if Yunus has to continue, surely he needs the American blessings.
Do you think General Zaman is now becoming stronger in his opposition to Muhammad Yunus?
When this government was brought in place, it was clearly conveyed that it had just one agenda, to have elections. Rest all were then engineered by Yunus. And as per the constitution, an interim government can only be there for 90 days. So he's trying to rewrite that constitution of 1972.
Rakhine, this corridor that is happening, what is the impact on India?
You have weapons coming and again, importantly, drugs. People are only concerned more about the refugees, militants, but this is a bomb which is ticking.
India has a Yunus problem, not a Bangladesh problem.
Yes.
Or both?
It is a Yunus problem because his platform to come to that position has been anti-India. And why anti-India? Because he was anti-Sheikh Hasina.
This episode is powered by easemytrip.com. Namaste, Jai Hind. You're watching or listening to another edition of the ENI podcast with Smita Prakash. Today we turn towards Bangladesh, which has become a playground for the superpowers who want access to its ports and proximity to Myanmar. Tensions between Bangladesh's interim government and its military leadership have escalated over a so-called humanitarian corridor, the Rakhine Corridor. One section believes that the US will use the Rakhine or Rakhine Rohingya corridor to arm the Arakan army against the Myanmar army. And why? Because big Chinese projects are located in that region. Today, Bangladesh hosts more than 1.3 million Rohingyas in camps at Cox's Bazar. In the past few months, the fight between the Arakan army, the military junta in the Arakan province has pushed more and more Rohingyas into Bangladesh. How does it concern India? India is impacted because the Indian states of Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur and Mizoram border Myanmar. India's security and economic interests in the northeast are impacted, something that Muhammad Yunus, chief advisor to Bangladesh, said in China about what he called the landlocked area of the 7 northeastern states of India. To understand the security dynamics of this region, we have in the podcast today Lieutenant General Nair. He's the former Director General of Assam Rifles and has served extensively in the northeast. Lieutenant General Pradeep Nair has commanded a brigade in Manipur where he was awarded the Yuddha Seva Medal. He was Inspector General of the Assam Rifles North in Nagaland, for which he was decorated with the Ati Vishisht Seva Medal. He's also worked in Nagaland, Manipur, Assam and Sikkim and been with the Defence Intelligence Agency looking into Myanmar and Bangladesh. Thank you, General Nair, for coming to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a very complicated area that we are talking about, but since you've served extensively in this region and you have been with the Defence Intelligence Agency, you've been looking after and looking at Bangladesh and Myanmar. So I want you to explain in complete layman terms what this Rakhine state, this Cox's Bazar, what is Bangladesh involved in this, in what manner? The big powers game out here, America, China, what is happening in this Rakhine state area?
Okay. Thank you. Firstly, let me express my deep gratitude to you for having me over.
Thank you.
It's good to be here again after my last visit. So coming to the issues that you asked me to speak about as an introductory part, let me start with, let me go from north to south. And Cox's Bazar, where you marked, there is a port here. There's a seaport here which is used for commercial purposes only. And this is also a port where there was a consignment of weapons which was dropped way back in 1993. There was this famous Operation Golden Bird undertaken. So those weapons were dropped. They came in that ship essentially for all our insurgent groups in the northeast, primarily the Naga insurgents. So that is the background of Cox's Bazar. It also is adjoining Rakhine state, which is there in Myanmar. Between the two, the boundary that is there, which you see marked in white, is actually the Naf River. That's the border between the two countries. And the region which borders or is at Naf River is generally that area is called Teknaf. And across the river in Myanmar and Rakhine State, that place is called Buthidong. Why I'm referencing to these places are because much of the movement of the Rohingyas, the refugees, which has happened in 2017-18, is astride this. Again, for the information of your viewers, the Rakhine problem of these Rohingyas actually goes back almost to 1978. That is when the first batch of refugees came into Bangladesh. So from then on, they have been coming at various times. That
you're talking about Rohingya refugees?
Yeah, Rohingya refugees coming from Rakhine into Bangladesh. So currently the figures are, that is in Bangladesh, over 1 million. People put it at 1.2 million.
1.3, yeah.
1.2, 1.3 million, thereabouts. And these are the people who have largely come in after 2017. While these people have come, but you still have close to 6 lakh Rohingyas in Rakhine state. And traditionally, the Rohingyas have never been accepted as citizens in Myanmar. In fact, there is also a Citizenship Act which was passed in sometimes in 1982 in Myanmar, whereby they were in some way ostracized, having no citizenship.
And they're minority even in Rakhine state.
Yeah, I'll give you the demographics of that. Rakhine is again a mixed composition. It has largely the Buddhists who are about 86%. Then you have 76%, not 86%. About 22% are the Rohingyas, the Muslims. Whereas the other Arakanis are Buddhists. And then, of course, there are some Christians, about 2%, and others. So the atrocities, so-called atrocities that have happened, have always been against the Rohingyas, the Muslims. If I can just take a minute and go back a little more in time,
sure.
They came, how the word Rohingya evolves, is from an Arab word, rehem, a mercy. So somewhere in 1752, there was a ship load of Arabs who had come here. It got shipwrecked, and the local king there gave them succor, aid, help, and that's how Rehem. So from Rehem, that word then became Rahengs and then Rohingyas. And gradually, also some people from Bangladesh migrated here. They got mixed Muslims, which is why in Rakhine, in Myanmar, they call them Bengalis. When they address Rohingyas, they give a blanket term, Bengalis, which means you don't belong here. So that is the whole problem. Now in Rakhine state, again, if you look, what is happening is this fight that is there between Myanmar Army, Tamadao, and the Arakan Army. Arakan Army now is the strongest ethnic armed group there. It claims on its official website that it has a strength of close to 32,000 and hugely armed. And mind you, they were raised only in 2009. And we can speak of that later. But today the scene is Arakan Army is fighting the Tamadao. Out of the 17 cities that are there in Rakhine state, there are only 14 which are 14 of them are with the Rohingyas, with the Arakan Army. The Myanmar Army, Tamadao, has only 3 cities under the control, and 2 of which are Sitwe.
So it's largely independent, you would say?
Largely independent.
Though they've not declared independence.
The point to note is this border which is there between Myanmar and Bangladesh, this 271 kilometers, 270, is totally under the control of the Arakan Army. Which means out of the 5 countries that Myanmar shares border with, this is the only border which is not with Myanmar Army. It's not under the control at all. So
the pushing of the Rohingyas into Bangladesh is done by the Arakan Army's permission? Or
traditionally been done by the Tamadao or the...
But now?
Since
it's in control of the Arakan Army
It's in control of the Arakan. The Arakan Army now, in some way, they have sobered a bit, though they have also committed atrocities, excesses against the Rohingyas. So Rohingyas are in a very peculiar spot. They have, people using force, the Arakan army, the Tamada also. So they have their own militia, the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army, for example. Then Arakan Rohingya group. There are 2-3 small militias which are there.
Arakan army, where did it get its arms and the support? From the Chinese, from the Americans? Now, I'm talking about currently. Which way do they lean? Do they lean Chinese? Do they lean American? Because those are the two superpowers now in this area. One wanting control and one already in control. Or influence, if not control.
Yes, that is where I want to again go back a little in time and tell you about the Arakan army itself. Like I said a few moments ago, it was raised in 2009. Nowhere in any literature have I seen this, but it is my assumption that it was raised, and it was raised in Kachin, which is the other extreme of Myanmar, is the northeast extreme of Myanmar. It was raised, helped by the KIA, Kachin Independent Army, which has huge connections with the Chinese. So that is where this got raised. And thereafter, it kept fighting there. The Arakan army kept fighting there. They have come to Rakhine only in 2018. So between 2009 and 18, my guess is they were being trained for a purpose. And that purpose, as I understand, is to offset our Kaladan multimodal project. Because our Kaladan multimodal project got signed.
By China, you mean?
By China. By China. Our Kaladan multimodal project got signed. The deal got signed in 2008. A year later, Arakan army gets raised. 2009 again, the same year, the oil and gas pipeline, that agreement gets signed between China and Myanmar. So China is now looking towards Bay of Bengal, and Kaladan, of course, Sitwe is the port. Chowkphu port is part of the oil and gas pipeline. So this agreement was signed in 2009, and it became commercial in 2013. Got commissioned in 2013.
So while we were building our pipeline, this was happening.
Yeah, this
on
deal
the Belt and Road.
got signed a year later, and then the BRI, of course, came much later. But this got included as part of the BRI. So they didn't want anyone else here. That, to my understanding, is the reason why Arakan army got raised. So while it has shifted here, it has taken control of Rakhine, but it still has connections with the Chinese, given that this was one of the, it was part of that Three Brotherhood alliance, which you know of.
Yeah, let's come to that in a bit, about the Three Brotherhood. But first, so this is the Belt and Road Initiative and the oil pipeline. From Kunming, that road is to go all the way to the border. This is what they want, the port. It wants that port
A deep sea
control.
port.
A deep sea port. So it wants that deep sea port, and that's how they plan through Myanmar. But for that, they needed the Arakan army to cooperate.
That's someone they needed to cooperate.
Not just the Chins.
Yeah, not just the Chins. No, Chins are a little to the north, but they wanted somebody, because given that it's so far away from China. At the place where this oil and gas pipeline starts, you have the Kokang region and the Wa independent state, which are totally under the control of the Chinese. So they have no problem there. But at the other extreme, they didn't have anyone. This is my hypothesis. That is why probably the Arakan army got raised. Though the call for Arakan sovereignty or an independent Arakan it goes back in time.
Okay. So now tell me, why is the Americans interested in this now, and this whole humanitarian corridor or whatever that they were planning, UN assisted? What is their interest in this region now?
The American interest primarily lies from the fact that today the major player here is China in Myanmar, and the major project of China which is coming is here. This deep sea port which we just spoke of is worth 7.3 billion. Then the oil and gas pipeline, it's again 2.7 billion. Together it's worth 10 billion. Then if you see the other special economic zone that has to come out, part of the China-Myanmar Economic Corridor, that's again worth almost 2.83 billion. So these are the major projects. Besides,
so it's
there's
not
so
as
many
if their
projects.
heart is bleeding for the Rohingyas.
No, not at all.
It's not just for that they are there.
They want a foothold here.
Who, the Americans?
The Americans want, because once this port or this oil and gas pipeline gets fully commercialized, which it has not. Today it is operating just at 10% or 12% of its capacity. And it is only catering for 2% of the energy needs of China. Why they want this is so that the Malacca dilemma which is there, the ships have to come through the Malacca Straits. That is another 3,000 kilometers for them. So if all the energy needs which come from the Middle East, if they can be pumped from here, it saves that much of time for them. It also helps the development of Yunnan, which is a relatively undeveloped
this
region.
is China's needs. I'm talking about the American needs. So America wants to stop this
America wants to stop this growth of this CMEC here. That's why they want a foothold here. From nowhere else can they get into Myanmar.
Okay.
Given that there are other countries, this is the only area from where they can get in.
So did Dr. Yunus, do you think that there was a backroom deal that he had with the Americans that I will allow you this thing to happen, your entry into Myanmar, and was there some kind, and you set me up in Bangladesh? Was it that? Do you think that was part of it?
Actually, there are two parts to this question. One is the interest that Yunus has in this project itself. Today, Yunus' interest is only to survive. You've seen what's happening in Bangladesh lately. Last 3-4 days, there are huge protest rallies going around. Most of the political parties have kind of got around to tell him, please declare a date for elections.
He's in Tokyo.
He's in Tokyo, yes. He's gone to Tokyo. That reminds me, in the 10 months that he's been there, this is the 11th country that he's visiting.
See, he's a speaking assignment kind of a person, right? So when a speaking assignment comes, he has to go. Like he forgets, that he's in charge of Bangladesh. You're in charge of a country now. But speaking engagement comes, he goes. This is a bizarre case. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, go ahead.
That's true. So while his interest is to stay in power, no matter what, and mind you, he had political aspirations way back in 2012. He had launched a party which didn't do too well. And thereafter, of course, he had issues with Sheikh Hasina for the past decade plus. So he wants to remain in power, notwithstanding the age not being on his side. So that's his interest. The American interest, obviously America cannot get into this directly. But there is sufficient media coverage of the role that the United States played to get him there in the first place.
Okay.
Yunus there. So today, if Yunus has to continue, surely he needs the American blessings. So that is kind of related to what you were alluding to. Is it that
I will serve your geostrategic interests in this region? You engineer whatever has to be done. And it's possible that that whole coup was engineered to get rid of Sheikh Hasina and place Muhammad Yunus out there.
Yes.
That having been said, why has he started leaning China now? If that was the case,
I couldn't get your
why
question.
is he leaning China?
Why is he leaning towards China?
Yeah.
Actually, the Chinese are very upset with this humanitarian corridor. Because they see the presence of the US coming there. But let's finish this corridor part so that it's more clear to your viewers. Now, whenever a corridor of this kind comes, in the past also there were some corridors by the United Nations at many other places, Syria, some other places. Those didn't work. Now, whenever we talk of a corridor, first you have to establish from where to where. So if you look at the map, in all likelihood, it's not now anywhere given as to where is this going to come, but it's fair to assume it will be in the same area from where the refugees came to Bangladesh. So it means from Cox's Bazar, it will go to Rakhine, that place which I told you, Mongdao or Baitudang, that is the place where it will go. So that will be the extent. Now, next question is this aid for whom? So today, who are the people there? It is the Buddhists. We spoke of 76%. They're okay. Nobody's fighting them. It is those 21-22% of Rohingyas for whom this aid is going. So it is supposed to go there. Now let us look at it this way. Is Rakhine the only state which is in trouble? No, there are so many other states which are in trouble. So why only
in Myanmar?
In Myanmar. So why only humanitarian aid here? Then on the ground, the situation is the Arakan army has control of Rakhine. Unlikely that, though people say it is to support the Arakan army, weapons and all to go later. But I feel a little different. Given the Chinese connect that the Arakan army has, the Chinese will not allow this in the first place. So I am looking at it this way. These weapons could well be for the, let's say, the ARSA. Again, this is not there in any media space. By my assessment in this, it may well possibly not be for Arakan army. These weapons, if it is planned to be sent later, could well be to arm the Rohingya militia, the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army, which I said. By the way, the fellow who heads this is a fellow called Ataullah, who was brought up in Pakistan.
Oh.
Yeah, he's a Pakistani citizen.
So he's not a Rohingya? Or he's a Rohingya living in Pakistan? Who lived in Pakistan?
Who lived in Pakistan, but now he's here. Conveniently.
Huh.
So, probably it could be to arm them, because they are the people who are now oppressed in a way, so to speak, the Rohingyas. So, ARSA, again what has happened is the people from ARSA have been picked up by the Myanmar army to fight the Arakan army.
Okay.
That's another interesting thing, because it is the same ARSA who were attacked by the Myanmar army.
Where are the ARSAs now?
They're all over in Rakhine. They're not at one particular place.
Okay.
They are a loose.
What is their skin in the game?
They are basically fighting for the Rohingyas.
Okay.
They're fighting for the Muslims who are there.
Okay. Now, why is it that the Americans in Cox's Bazar, the Americans being present in Cox's Bazar, has got Bangladeshis annoyed? They don't like it that they are there. Yunus might have agreed to it, but it's got the Bangladesh army annoyed. It's got even the Jamaatis don't like the idea of the Americans out there. If the Americans are there to aid the Rohingyas, why are the Jamaatis angry then?
Again, you have to see the connect that Jamaatis have with the ISI, with the other Islamic groups. So traditionally, they've never trusted the Americans, no matter where it was, Afghanistan, Pakistan, anywhere. Traditionally, they don't trust them. So that is where there is a difference between the two, that is Yunus and the Jamaat. But insofar as the army, you very rightly brought out that it's not just the arrival of the Americans. There's so many other decisions that Yunus has taken without keeping the army in the loop, which is what was raised by the chief on 21st when he addressed his officers last Wednesday.
He called it a bloody corridor.
He called it, yes, he used that word.
He was quite clear. And I mean, I don't know whether Yunus expected that kind of an open backlash where your army chief is openly, saying something. Because for a long time, the Bangladesh army has been in the barracks. They have not spoken out openly. Even when Sheikh Hasina's ouster was done with the army playing a quiet role. Like, they didn't come out openly to say that humne coup kiya hai. So now this whole thing, this open saying that no, this corridor is not in Bangladesh's interest. Do you think that's come as a shocker to Yunus?
It surely would have come as a shocker, because he would not have expected this. But then you have to look at, there have been phases when Bangladesh itself had army rule. 12 years actually, if I remember correct.
Yeah.
4 years under Ziaur Rahman initially, and later on Ershad another 8 years.
Yeah.
So all those 12 years were very troubled times. There used to be huge rallies, there used to be a lot of violent activities that were being carried out. It was not very peaceful. The economic growth was very poor. So their experience with the army at the helm is not too good. That Bangladesh army has learnt that if they come to power, I mean, if they wanted to usurp him, they could have done it any time. In fact, last year they could have taken power themselves.
Yeah.
Why would they allow him? But they have learned from the mistake. They know it doesn't work. And the mindset of the Bangladeshis is more democratic. They want democracy where they can express their opinions. They're not like what is there in Pakistan. They're not like Pakistanis at all. That's why they formed a separate country in the first place. So since he's wanting to be there at all costs, he was trying everything possible. But when the army chief called his officers, you would have noticed three things that happened, which are very prominent. One is he had the Navy and the Air Force chief also sitting with him when he was addressing the officers. Second, he used this thing about the corridor, and what he was saying was that these kind of decisions, policy decisions, cannot be taken without us being in the loop. That is the second thing he was saying. And the third thing that he said was all these street protests, etc., have to go. Because he is very sure that they have again been engineered by Yunus. because they are the people who got him to power in the first place, the youth, the Jamaat. Of course, there are BNP people also out there, but for different reasons.
So has he, has he agreed with, do you think he's on the same page with the army now and said, yes, I will tell the Americans not to be there at that humanitarian corridor, to back off? Or is it just a temporary truce now with both the Americans and the army?
So he's not okay with what the army chief has said. While the army chief has given a clear statement that he wants the election by December this year, what he says is, no, it will be any time between Jan and June.
Because the country is not ready for it as yet. Systems are not in place. Reforms haven't taken place as yet.
Yeah, that is the alibi, that's the ruse, that's the excuse that he's giving. But more importantly, what he wants is the party that he has raised, the NCP, National Citizens Party.
To take roots.
Yeah, they have not truly established themselves.
Yeah.
When he came to power itself, this was one of the thoughts that was being expressed by many people, that he has political ambitions, and to be at the helm, he has to have a party of his own. So when this party was launched, it was launched only in March this year, this NCP, all these students who supposed to have taken part in the all those protests, June, July protests. Now those are the people, they don't have traction in the rural areas. Where the votes lie.
BNP still is
no, actually in rural it is both BNP and Awami League, both.
Yeah, but if both they declare Awami League that they can't take part, ban them in the election, then you never know.
But when elections are announced, I'm sure they will have to. In fact, even BNP is of the view that they want Awami League also, knowing fully well that even if they come, they'll not win.
But some experts are saying that even if Awami League, they put up their candidates, the candidates will be killed. So they are already, those rumors are floating that put up your candidates and we'll see what happens to them.
That's the threat by the Jamaat actually.
Yeah, because Awami League has done the same thing in the past with the BNP.
True.
So this is what it is.
But BNP
it's a very, to use again the word bloody, but it's blood-soaked elections always, right, in the past, whenever there has been an election where both were taking part.
Yeah, that's true. But the point is, the BNP wants this election, whenever it happens, to look very legitimate, which is why they want an opposition. They want Awami League to take part in this. And they're very sure that they'll win. So this is a very difficult situation. If Awami League comes, then I don't think this NCP stands any chance, given the fact that it has no support anywhere in the rural areas. That is why he's trying to postpone it, gain greater traction, embed himself, thereby make himself more popular.
But do you think General Zaman is now becoming stronger in his opposition to Muhammad Yunus? And is he able to assert himself more? Because for the past 6 months, you saw that he was not really talking much. But now he seems to be asserting. Will he just call for an election regardless of what Muhammad Yunus says?
I think so, because that was the mandate he gave. When this government was brought in place, it was clearly conveyed that it had just one agenda, to have elections. Rest all were then engineered by Yunus. All these reforms, 5-6 reforms that he's talking of, that is basically to buy time. But the agenda for the government was just singular, which is to have elections. And as per the constitution, an interim government can only be there for 90 days.
Okay.
So he's trying to rewrite that constitution of 1972. You know, the famous July declaration last year, where they said they have to do away with the constitution and all of that, those protests that were there. They want to engineer a new constitution. So that is the point. But I think the army chief will stick to his guns and he will ask for election by December.
So I want to come to that part about when we were talking about the two superpowers, which is China and America, playing their games in this region, whether it is Bangladesh or Myanmar, a very assertive role now being played by both of them. And with Muhammad Yunus out there still in charge, what is the impact on India that this can have? This Rakhine, this corridor that is happening, American and Chinese presence in this area. What is the impact on India?
Again, you have to look at one is the Indian economic interests that lie here, and the connectivity things which we are trying to address. So the two flagship projects that we have here, Kaladan Multimodal project, it is in this disturbed area. It is through Rakhine, and the last part is in Chin State, where it gets into Mizoram. And this part of Chin State is also under the occupation of the Arakan army. So the complete Kaladan multimodal project, if it has to come up, it has to have the concurrence of the Arakan army. Though the Arakan army has said that we will not stop the construction of Kaladan.
So if you could explain this Kaladan multimodal project.
So the Kaladan multimodal project is essentially, to cater for connectivity in the northeast, given that the current connectivity is only through the Siliguri corridor or Chicken's Neck. So it involves movement of goods first by ship from Kolkata to Sitwe. That's about 540 kilometers. Then it's offloaded at
Sitwe is in?
Sitwe is in Rakhine State.
Rakhine, okay.
Sitwe, where it gets offloaded. And from there, it will go by boats.
Sitwe is one of the ports where that Belt and Road is also going to come.
No, that is Chowkphu. That is 103 kilometers south of this.
Okay, all right.
So that is south of this.
So Sitwe is the Myanmar port, Rakhine Corridor area.
Correct.
Where our stuff is going to land out here.
It gets,
so connectivity to the northeastern states.
From there, it will then get loaded onto boats and go on that Kaladan river or Kaladan river from Sitwe port. It goes to the place called Paletwa, which is on to the north. You see Paletwa. There it is offloaded again, and then it moves by road up to Zorunpoi via Kaletwa. So this stretch is about 110 kilometers.
Okay.
And in this 110 kilometers, about 60% of work is already complete. Between kilometer stone 40 and 60, as we go from Paletwa side, between kilometer 40 and 60, that is the only place where work is left. Otherwise, once this comes through, the Indian part of from Zorunpui northwards till Aizawl, it is connected already.
So if anybody has bad intentions in the Chicken's Neck area, we still have
this
option, but then this option is also under threat now, you're saying.
Under threat in the sense, it has not been, we've not been able to succeed because of the continued disturbed situation that exists.
In Myanmar.
In Myanmar.
Especially in the Rakhine state.
Especially in the Rakhine state. Initially it was contracted to some Indian companies and then there was some protest and all that it should be given to some locals. Thereafter the Arakan army had kidnapped some of the workers. They were let off. But the last that the Arakan army has spoken about 10 months back is you please go ahead because it benefits the people, the Rakhine people also, which is quite unlike the projects of the Chinese which are there in Myanmar. Okay. All projects that are there in Myanmar benefit only the Chinese. There is hardly any benefit which is coming to, whereas when this comes up, Rakhine, which happens to be one of the most backward states, and Chin state, they will benefit hugely from not just this what is coming by sea, but also goods which come from northeast. There's a lot of goods which can come from the northeast to these people. So these areas are all very remote, not very well developed.
Okay. Now, in this, tell me the Indian interest in this area. You've served in some of the northeastern states. So explain to me, one is trade. The second one is how this area is also militancy affected. That Indian militants are also working out there. So tell me about that region. So why is it important for us from a national security perspective?
Yeah, then you have to look at the complete northeast. One of the things that I started off, initially I told you Cox's Bazar is the place where the weapon consignments came from. And in Bangladesh used to have all these militant camps earlier. But Sheikh Hasina during her time, she removed all those camps. So it became free. But now there are certain intelligence reports to suggest that they are making overtures to some of our militant groups that you can come and establish camps. Though nothing is in the media, but it is there, it's being reported. You have to look at Mizoram, which at one point of time was affected by insurgency for 20 years from between 1966 to 86. For 20 years, it bore the brunt of insurgency. But currently there is immediately to the northeast of this is Manipur, and northeast of that is Nagaland, and further north is Arunachal. These are the places where militancy is still there.
And a lot of this cross movement is happening between Myanmar and these four northeastern states.
So what happens, increasingly when this area gets disturbed, there's a lot of movement of weapons. Refugees as it is are coming. Today Mizoram is the most troubled state in terms of refugees coming from Myanmar. So along with the refugees, you have weapons coming, and again, importantly, drugs. That's a big problem which we are not noticing. If I can give you some figures
Sure.
of the increased drug movement that is happening. Last year, Assam Rifles caught drugs worth 5,000 crores. Year before last was again 4,800 crores. So that is the kind of movement that is happening, and it is all coming from the Golden Triangle. As you would be aware, 2023 in Afghanistan, Taliban stopped the production of opium. So that complete opium cultivation has shifted here to Golden Triangle, and a lot of it is coming in. If you look at the movement in terms of the complete country, if you go by the NCB annual report, in 2023-24, they have caught heroin worth 8,000 kgs. Now compare this with 2022. 2022, as per the same report of the NCB, it was 5,000 kgs. 2021, it was 3,000 kgs. See the exponential increase that is happening.
And that is also funding all the
that
unrest
is funding the
which is happening.
militants also.
Political unrest,
Yes. And the
militancy
militants.
is all funded by this drug trade.
Largely funded, which is again not spoken of much. So all these figures which I told of the NCB, most of it is coming, though a large part comes from Pakistan also, but there's a huge increase that is happening from the northeast. People are only concerned more about the refugees, militants, but this is a bomb which is ticking. Incidentally, if you see amongst the 8 states of the northeast, per capita consumption of illegal drugs in the country, amongst the top 10, there are 6 of them. They are all small states, yet per capita consumption is highest. Why? Because there is so much of easy access of drugs which is coming, and this problem is increasing.
Yeah. And so socio-economic factors also leading to all these things.
Absolutely.
And it's going to damage these 7 northeastern states, not just the ones which are bordering Myanmar, but also bordering Bangladesh.
Yeah.
They will also get impacted. I want to take you to that whole Chicken Neck corridor, that area, as well as what the Assam Chief Minister tweeted, which became a little bit of a controversy. Firstly, what Mohammad Yunus said when he was in China, he talked about the 7 northeastern states, and he keeps talking about them as if they are a different entity from India. And he talks about how China can trade with the 7 northeastern states using Bangladesh. That got India very riled up, and the Assam Chief Minister then tweeted in which he said people talk about the Siliguri corridor, but they forget Bangladesh has 2 chicken necks too. One is an 80 kilometer wide and another one is 28 kilometers, which he said. He says that Bangladesh also has 2 chicken necks of their own. Now explain this, how strategically this has bothered us, the chicken neck that India has and the chicken neck corridor which Bangladesh has, which is the Chittagong, this one. The second is a 28 kilometer Chittagong corridor from South Tripura till the Bay of Bengal. The corridor is smaller than India's chicken neck. It's the only link between Bangladesh's economic capital and political capital. So this is what he said. He talked about India's chicken neck and Bangladesh's chicken neck. So could you explain to this how these two things impact?
Firstly, the viewers must know the context in which the statement was made by Yunus. He was visiting China for his 4-day visit. And after having met everyone there, he made the statement in which one of the things he also said was, we are the guardians of the ocean there. Since these 8 states are cut off, landlocked. The point to understand, the viewers must also know that while he may say that, if they look at the map, it is Bangladesh which is India locked. 93% of their borders, land borders, I'm not talking of the coastal, land borders, 93% they share with us. Out of the 57 rivers that flow into Bangladesh, 54 go from India. So we are an upper riparian state. There is a lot of trouble that we can create. But that's not our outlook. The present Yunus government to my understanding, is just a blip. It's a temporary
And all
thing.
that problem had almost got solved with Sheikh Hasina.
True.
The whole water dispute and all those things had almost, even though Mamata Banerjee did not want it, in spite of that, it had almost, when Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister and Sheikh Hasina, they'd almost sorted out exchange of conclaves, water, all that had almost got the Tista issue and things.
Yeah, Tista, since you mentioned, it was actually a project which we were to develop. Now he's asked the Chinese to come here. How can Chinese develop? China can only be in Myanmar. And this Tista project, what does it mean? It means creating series of barrages, making canals, so that the water gets used to the optimal capacity, rather than water not being available in dry seasons. So this complete Rangpur area, the northern part, the head kind of a thing which you see of Bangladesh, that's where the Brahmaputra comes in, and also the Tista.
Yeah.
So these, other than the Brahmaputra part, where the Tista comes from, that area becomes totally dry. So while that agreement, when
that Yangtze and it comes down.
While that agreement couldn't happen, the Tista project would have surely addressed their issue. Now he's just trying to play to the gallery by giving it to Chinese. How can Chinese create barrages in India? They'll be able to only create barrages in Bangladesh. But we are the upper reference state.
Yeah.
So there is no sense in what he's speaking on that.
So,
but coming to these two
chicken necks
that were commented upon.
Three actually. One which we have and two which they have.
As of course, I'm talking of the ones which they have. The Rangpur salient, for example. Now, it is a vulnerability that they have. While both these vulnerabilities are there, I am looking at the larger picture. We are not a nation which goes around annexing countries. But if they try to get other players here who are inimical to our interests, like that
Lalmonirhat, the airstrip.
Airbase which they are trying to develop. They have called the Chinese to come and invest here. So if such provocative measures are initiated by them, then there would always be a counter to that. Like Bangladesh, for example, like we did an IWT to Pakistan. People don't understand the ramification. They will understand in times to come. But here, the other things that we have done to Bangladesh, we've banned the export of their goods through our airports and seaports, which means, if I have to give it figuratively, 1 kg of garments, for example, if it was exported from any of India's airports, any, could be Delhi, could be Calcutta, it would cost them $1 a kg. Now, when they are doing it from their country, it's costing them $3 a kg. The context here also is that today almost 40% of the garment industry is stopped. It's not functional after 5th of August. So the country which was a one industry country, largely garments and textiles, today it's taken a huge hit, and with this, where the exports become so expensive and the trade tariffs which Trump is leaving on them is even much more, they have no choice but to temper down. They cannot.
But also the yarn comes from India, right? So it impacts on our guys also who are exporting to Bangladesh. So it's going to impact both countries.
But right? more to them.
Okay.
More to them than to us.
Okay. Okay, let's get into the Lalmonirhat airbase. Because of what now he has said, that this airbase, he's asked China to develop, it's a bugbear for us, right? And the latest we've heard is that there's a defunct airbase in Tripura, which we are now trying to, it's a World War II airbase, which is lying in Tripura, when we are trying to revive that airbase because of what Bangladesh is doing in Lalmonirhat. Now, not just asking China to do it, but I believe the contractor is a Pakistani or something like that.
That's true.
So he's unnecessarily needling. And plus, tell me, this sudden warming of ties between Pakistan and Bangladesh, is it all because of this one man, Yunus, or two men, the Pakistan High Commissioner out there, suddenly, who's disappeared because of some unsavory honey trap or whatever it was?
Yeah.
So much of complication which is happening. So tell me about the airbase, the Lalmonirhat, Tripura Airbase, and what is Yunus planning with this China and Pakistan?
Okay, Lalmonirhat airbase, like you said, was used in the World War. After that, it was never used. So it's more or less like a defunct airstrip which they want to now develop. Given the proximity to Siliguri corridor, even if they don't have aircrafts, they have radars, the other
Air defense and stuff like that. Yeah.
Stuff or anything else to gather intelligence from this very vulnerable, so-called vulnerable corridor of ours. I don't really feel it's all that vulnerable. So they can develop it for that.
And this is just about 20 kilometers from Indian border.
Yeah.
So it is vulnerable.
It is vulnerable
sense.
In that sense, yes. But the second base that you spoke of, Tripura, that's a place called Kailash. Kailash is again absolutely on the very close to the Bangladesh border and east of this Lalmonirhat. So if they develop something there, obviously we'll sent signals that we'll also do something.
But we have our Rafales and all in that range.
In that Rafales are well within the range. So I don't think we need to develop this. What I'm trying to say is by the time all these things get...
Yunus will go.
Yunus might not be there. That's my understanding.
So then India has a Yunus problem, not a Bangladesh
India
problem.
Has because his platform to come to that position has been anti-India. Why anti-India? Because he was anti-Sheikh Hasina. And she's been anti-Sheikh Hasina since 2008. Last year he was framed for charges and he was to go in jail for 6 months. And his lawyer says there were about 100 charges against him.
So India has a Yunus problem, not a Bangladesh problem.
Yes.
Or both?
It is a Yunus problem. And the support base for him is the Jamaat largely. And the youth, their minds can swing anyway. It's very volatile, very dynamic. But like most of us understand, after 1971, Pakistan really never left Bangladesh. While the army and everything else must have gone. But they had their sleeper cells, their people there constantly keeping watch of what's happening. And this complete episode of Sheikh Hasina going was engineered by multiple players in this.
Yeah.
We all know that. And Pakistan was one of the important players in that. So
while we are fighting in the West against them with Operation Sindoor still not yet officially been taken down, this is the strategic arm now in Bangladesh that they have, right?
You cannot call it a strategic arm. These are all irritants. I would put it that way. These are all irritants and these won't last. One factor I was mentioning this, those rivers and all I mentioned, the land border I mentioned. It is geography which will eventually decide our relations, as also the cultural connect that we have with the people there. A prime example of this was Durga Puja last October. Many people, Bangladesh watchers said, maybe with all this hype, anti-India hype and all that, Bangladesh and the atrocities that were committed against Hindus and Shias and Christians and all of that, they said it will not be celebrated. And to everybody's surprise, it was celebrated like it's celebrated in West Bengal with as much pomp and show. So change of government and all has not affected the cultural connect that we have with the Bangladeshis.
But they're saying that there is a subtle change which is happening. And it's sure enough there. Earlier they used to say that you never used to see women wearing burqas or salwar kameez. It was basically sari. Bangladeshi women were in saris. They used to wear bindis. And the pujas used to happen. And the Muslims and the Hindus would go to each other's homes for Eid and Durga Puja. And it was a common thing which was happening. But slowly and steadily, the Jamaat guys go and ensure that that those road rallies don't happen where the idol is taken out and all. And there have been crackdowns. I mean, it is happening.
Yes, it is there.
So this cultural connect cannot be depended on as a long-term strategy that India can have, right?
I feel this point of religion which you said, it's engulfing many other places also. But particularly in Bangladesh, yes, the Jamaat has had a major role in this. The fundamentalists were there. If you recollect 2017, though this fundamentalist element was always there, but for the first time it came to light only in 2017, 1st of June or 1st of July, when that attack happened on that Holy Artisan Bakery.
Correct, yes.
Where 22 people were killed. So that is when Bangladesh realized this. The role of fundamentalists. And after that...
But they're not scared of the role of fundamentalists to such an extent that we'll become another Pakistan. But
no.
There is that connect.
That connect is there. That Ummah connect will remain.
Will remain. So that's why I'm saying that for us to think that, language is very important for Bangladesh. It was created in the name of language. So it is the only country in the world to created in the name of language. That is there, yes. Democracy suddenly has become fragile, though they were very proud of being an Islamic democratic nation. Islamic came later, but democratic nation. They were very proud of it. But, it's enough for one change of government to disrupt everything. So anyway, that's a different point. I want to come back to the superpowers playing games out there. Now that the gates have been opened for Americans and subtly for the Chinese to come, they're never going to go away now. You open the gates for superpowers, they don't leave. They're just waiting for that one instinct. And that gate has been opened. Whether this corridor that we were talking about or whatever way the Chinese have entered. They've entered, right, Bangladesh?
Chinese have been always there. Chinese have... only thing is Yunus is now...
legitimized it.
Legitimizing it even more, calling in more Chinese presence. But insofar as Myanmar goes, whether the superpowers have they don't even have a toehold now. Whether they'll get one with this corridor is, I'm a little circumspect on that.
Okay.
Given the stakeholders that are there. Because a corridor cannot come only if one country agrees. The other country also has to agree. And in that other country, there are so many stakeholders. That's the whole point.
Okay. Is there any allergy towards the Americans in Myanmar like Bangladesh? Are the people suspicious of the Americans coming in through this corridor?
US is actually has not played as important a role as it should have in Myanmar for long periods of time. It was only when Hillary Clinton came and they had that brief period of democracy for 6 years, 7 years.
And they hoped Aung San Suu Kyi would do something for them.
They hoped she'll do something. That is the only time when we saw some US presence. But how it has affected them, both Bangladesh and Myanmar, is this US aid going. In a big way, it has affected the refugees in Bangladesh, the Rohingya refugees who've gone there, and here the development of the country as such in Myanmar, given that it's a war-ridden country, it's hugely impacted them. So now with this aid also going, and it is not military aid which will help them. It has to be more humanitarian, and like I said, this is again not understood by many. Amongst all the neighbors, for China, Myanmar is one of the most important neighbor given the scarce population, the immense resources that it has, and rare earth in particular. Rare earth
let's
minerals.
talk about that, yes.
So, Kachin state, the one on the northeast, is where most of these mines are. In fact, people say Chinese have extracted so much of rare earth minerals from there that the landscape in Kachin state looks like a moon's surface. It's that bad.
And if Trump comes to know about rare earths, maybe he knows about it.
Probably he knows about it already.
Yeah. So he might also get interested because of rare earths. That's what he's shopping for everywhere. Let me come back to India out here. Now, we have crossed over to Myanmar. Our troops have crossed over at times to tackle with militancy. The militants who operate in India and then rush over to Myanmar. Tell us about those factions of militants who do this. Where do they find refuge in Myanmar?
Now, if you look at the...
Have you done that? Can you talk about it?
I can talk about a joint operation that was undertaken between us and the Myanmar Army in 2019. I can talk of that because there were few camps that were busted by the Myanmar Army, not by us. But it was a huge success. But coming back to your question of which are the militant groups and where are they operating from, firstly, there were about 20 to 22 camps of all these militant groups, the Nagas, the Manipuri militants, that is the Kukis, the Meiteis, everyone, they all had bases here.
Where?
In Myanmar. There are 22 camps which were there. They were in 3 clusters called as the Northern Cluster, which was opposite partly Arunachal, partly Nagaland. Then there's a Central Cluster, which was opposite Manipur. And then there's a Southern Cluster, which was south of Manipur. So these were the 3 clusters. And these were regions which were traditionally very, very peaceful areas for Myanmar until the coup happened on 1st February 21. After that, it's been a huge state of unrest. Most of these militants are now fighting alongside the Myanmar army. The Kuki militants, for example, are fighting alongside the PDF.
Fighting who?
The PDF is fighting the Myanmar army.
Okay.
So the KNA.
So they're like mercenaries.
Yeah, they're like mercenaries. KNA-B, Burma, for example. Along with that, some of the Kukis from India also would have gone, probably. And they're fighting the Myanmar army.
Okay.
Similarly, the valley-based insurgent groups, they are fighting with the Myanmar army against the PDF.
Okay.
It's a very complex web that is there.
I'm trying to make sense of this.
It's a very complex web. But given the fact that the levels of militancy has come down hugely, immensely, the violence levels have come down. Other than Manipur, Manipur is a different story. We'll not talk about that because that's not militancy related. Most of it is not. But the other militants, whether it is Alpha by and large is gone, almost gone. But Paresh Barowa continues to be in Yunnan. So he still carries out few actions once in a way.
How old is he? He must be in his 70s
he will be in his 70s.
Yeah, okay.
He'll be in his 70s. So Alpha is more or less gone. Then you come to the Naga militants. The NSCN-K, one faction of the NSCN-K which is fighting the Indian security forces, that is NSCN-K Yungang faction. Yungang is a fellow who belongs to Myanmar. So those people also off and on they do attack our security forces in South Arunachal Pradesh and parts of Nagaland. Again, nothing great as compared to what existed earlier. Coming to the valley-based insurgent groups, the biggest and the oldest group was, of course, the UNLF. One part of the UNLF has come on ceasefire there now in Manipur. The other part is still there. PLA is still there, People's Liberation Army. In fact, that is the group which ambushed the commanding officer of 46 Assam Rifles, if you recollect, in 2021 November. So PLA is still active, but their numbers are quite less.
But they run over to Myanmar still, or they don't?
They are based in Myanmar. They would come to India, carry out these attacks and go back. And you're talking of the surgical...
So are we allowed your surgical strike?
Yeah, no, you started with the surgical strike. You know, this happened in 2015, 4th of June, when you had this column of 18 Dogras which was ambushed in Manipur. And as a retaliation, few days later, our troops went across and went to what is now, what I was talking of, that those clusters, one of those clusters went and attacked where these people were. And it was in the news. Some of the people were awarded also. It was quite successful. Coming back to the other point, you spoke of that where I was involved. This was 2019 again. One of the very important camps which was across Nagaland was struck by the Myanmar army, and there were a huge number of casualties. Possibly this was an operation undertaken after many, many years by the Myanmar army in our favor. The previous one to this, or some coming very close to this, was that Operation Golden Bird, which I spoke of, 1993.
In the earlier episode, viewers and listeners, you can just go into episode number 214 and you can watch the details in this about what the general had to say about some of the operations. Anyway, yes, go ahead.
So this was one of these successful operations in which large number of, I won't mention the number here because this is all, these are certain things which we don't disclose. But surely most of the militant groups of the Northeast took a hit because they had never expected the Myanmar army to be launching an operation against them, given that they were being sheltered by the Myanmar army. So it was, and after that I don't think any such operation has happened.
Okay.
And that happened primarily because we were able to gain their confidence in a manner that they agreed to do this for us.
For India, which to come back again to this part, one is of course what you said was the drug problem, the militancy problem, and then to have the situation where you have now the head of government, even if he's not elected, the head of government making these threatening noises regarding China, America, all these things coming in. We are just playing a wait and watch game that one fine day Yunus will go, one fine day elections will be held, one fine day somebody will be elected out there who would be as pro-India as Sheikh Hasina was. Is that a good strategic planning that India does, hoping to have a friendly regime in Bangladesh?
I would word it that it's actually our maturity, our strategic patience.
Okay.
And in case of Bangladesh, that is required given our size. I mean, we cannot compare our size with Bangladesh. It's a much smaller country with linkages and all of that. And whenever there is a need to do something, we do that. We do it very succinctly. And we don't, kind of shout from the rooftops that this is what we've done to you. You just have to go to Bangladesh or speak to any Bangladesh. I give you an example of this garment industry, how terribly it's hit them. They don't, because when this hits them, tomorrow it is the people of Bangladesh only who will throw them out, eventually. And my understanding is something like this awakening amongst people will come.
Because
at some point.
Bangladeshis, they actually took pride in the fact that they had some kind of a strategic neutrality with regard to China and with regard to the US. They used to pride in that, that they were somewhere, the leaning towards India was because India helped in the creation of Bangladesh. So the leaning was that way. But they liked the idea of that strategic neutrality, which Yunus has overturned completely. Am I right? Or
if you look at Sheikh Hasina's regime also, she was playing a balancing act.
Yeah.
There were a lot of Chinese investments that were coming in. But each of these investments was studied in some way as to whether it would in some way upset the relations with India. So that understanding was always there. But what they required then was investments. They needed the deep pockets that China had. But only later they realized that unlike India, there is very little amount of grants that they give.
No freebies.
Everything is loans.
Yeah, transactional completely.
Yeah. Now even when Yunus went to China, I wonder if you read that his major plea was, please reduce the interest rate from 3.5% to bring it down to 1%. Because it will pinch us. It is fine to say that he's come back with so much of aid and all that. But in that aid, what is the loan component? The loan component is huge. Grants is very less. When they give a press brief, they say in loans and grants and all. The grant is not more than 10% of all the money that has been given to them. Whereas India is not that way. If you look at the projects that are there, the connectivity projects, whether it is the ports, the rail projects, Akhoda, Agartala project, or any of these projects that we undertaken, these are largely, almost like grants. And it has hugely improved their infrastructure, their lifestyle, the GDP, everything has helped. So what I'm trying to tell you is, if today India is not openly, opposing or giving a counter statement to all that he says, I think it's a very mature way of handling this. Okay. Sooner rather than later, this person is going to be out. It's just a wait and watch game that we're doing. And while there will be huge Pakistani and Chinese interventions to kind of derail the India-Bangladesh relationship, but if you are a person who's been watching Bangladesh for long, I feel eventually things will be fine.
All right. On that note, thank you so much
for
coming on the podcast and explaining this region, very highly complicated region for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you once again for having me.
Thank you for watching or listening to this edition of the ANI podcast with Smita Prakash. Do like or subscribe on whichever channel you have seen this or heard this. Namaste. Jai Hind. This episode is powered by easemytrip.com. Click here to watch the previous episodes.